Hello. If you are watching this in the future, well, I guess you'd have to be. This is my third video in my Mint Messiah self-branded advocate for Linux. Today I'm not going to rave about Linux, but I'm going to instead describe how I don't actually fit the typical Linux user stereotypes that I've begun to notice on YouTube. Also, I remembered something that I heard about the Ronald Reagan-Jimmy Carter election years and years ago when I was a child, is that Jimmy Carter was uncomfortable on camera, and Ronald Reagan, on the other hand, an experienced actor, was warm with the camera. He looked into it as if it were a person. I'm going to try to lean more that direction if I can. Obviously not an actor, nor am I a politician, but some advice that I remember from my childhood when looking back on the landslide election where Carter was utterly defeated had more to do probably with the economics and Carter's sort of incompetence at being a chief executive. He wasn't going to win. Neither was his vice president in the subsequent re-election of Ronald Reagan, which I think was even more of a drubbing than the Jimmy Carter election. I digress. What I wanted to talk about today is Linux user stereotypes. As you notice, I don't have a beard. This face won't grow one. So right there, I am a small minority within the, I hate to use the derogative term, but the neckbeard Linux user community. Even the snazzier ones do have a full beard, even if it's kept groomed properly. Gotta have a beard to be a Linux guy. I'm a little overweight, but I don't also think I'm big enough to be a Linux guy. So another stereotype I may have mentioned in a previous video is I use Arch, by the way. I don't use Arch. I've tried Manjaro, which is derived from Arch. I dabbled into elementary OS Endeavor, which is also derived from Arch. But the idea of Arch is that you sort of build your own system from scratch, which you can even take a step farther if you dive down a rabbit hole called Gen 2. I plan on doing neither. I may do Arch on one of my extra machines just to say I've done it. At some point, I'll use the script. I don't need to do it line by line like that 45-minute Mudahar video where he shows you how to do it right before finding out himself that there's a fairly simple, if yet tech-advanced type of script that you can throw Arch on a blank disk. I'm gonna do that, just as a way of keeping myself challenged. But it just works Linux Mint guy because it was second or third distro I tried. It did just work. Had minor hardware issues here and there. I had to learn how to install a wireless driver once. Same wireless device, but it was hard, easy, and then didn't give it enough effort the third time. It should have been very simple and standardized, but every time I discovered the wireless wasn't working, I went in and did a search and obviously turned up different results each time because, was able to do it 1.5 times out of 3, 50-50. But for the most part, Linux Mint, the latest kernel that's supported. I won't dive down the rabbit hole of, like using the latest kernel versus the one that your distro, holds back on due to stability issues. But Linux has run most wireless cards, has run touch screens effortlessly, has cured a computer of Bluetooth issues, which I mentioned in the last one. So back to my, meandering away from my topic. Linux stereotypes. Mint is often recommended for new users to switch, which, kind of has its own negative connotation with the hardcore Linux people, that it's for noobs. I am a noob. I haven't used Linux that long. But I use it as my daily driver. I haven't touched Windows for weeks, and that was only when I needed specific Windows utilities to work on a customer's computer. And so I don't fall into the, I use arch stereotype, I don't fall into the overweight stereotype, and I don't fall into the bearded stereotype. You could argue that I fall into the slightly antisocial stereotype, but I was that way long before computers in general, personal computers, even though I had, very early personal computers, the Commodore VIC-20, or the predecessor to the Commodore 64, which I also had. Been using computers a long time, been kind of an antisocial nerd equally as long. I guess that is a stereotype I sort of fall into, but I would claim it before computers might be the byproduct of that versus, it's a community now. Ironically enough, to be antisocial, you can be antisocial and still have a powerful online presence where you don't have the normal social anxieties because you're not staring at somebody face to face. You get to think at a keyboard before you communicate so that your thoughts don't come out like with the social pressures on top of them. You can actually elaborate. My ex-wife once told me I was deadly when I had a chance to collect my thoughts, but of course arguing with any woman, it's a jab and duck sort of, not physically but verbally. I don't get that. It's not an environment where you can collect your thoughts. You have to really go into it strong with your thoughts, and you might have to compete with volume. You might have to be subject to random and seemingly unrelated, although it is to them, topic shifts. Oh yeah, well, okay, I'm going off the rails again. I think I've probably summed up my, I'm not the stereotypical, I don't get through conclusion, or, maybe I don't need a beard to be a neck beard. I identify as one.